Right, welcome to this video. Unfortunately, no fancy introduction of me stood in front of the Maserati looking a mess. Instead, I'm over in France working on my boat looking a mess. So this video is going to be about changing the gearbox mounts and the engine mounts. It's just an instructional video, so if you're looking for entertainment, I'm afraid there won't be much here, but if you're looking to do these jobs, then this could be hopefully useful to you. So if you enjoyed this video and it is useful to you, please consider liking and subscribing. Thanks very much. Right, so the gearbox mount is pretty hard for me to video here, but there's 4 bolts, two there and then 2 down here. All right, and they're very short, so don't undo them too much without supporting the gearbox. Very short, like as in you only do them a few turns and then the gearbox mount drops, so you'd be in danger if you undid them too much. You'd be in danger, and didn't have this support, you'd be in danger of the engine really dropping here and damaging pipes and stuff like that. Then it's the nut that goes on top of the engine mount that is up over the top here. It's a 18mm nut, so you need 18mm socket. A spanner won't fit, or at least mine won't, because it's slightly recessed. I had to use this extension bar with a deep 14mm socket on the end, slide it over the end of my ratchet that's there, over a ratchet handle to give me more purchase all the way up here, and then stick my hands here and pull really hard to get it undone. Once you drop it down, there's this cable here. You need to undo 2 bolts there to get this bracket out. I'm not sure what bolts they are. They feel like 10mm. I think it's worth me taking that off, because then I can undo all of the engine mount easily. Although all I've got to do is undo, and this is a bolt that passes all the way through here, all I've got to do is undo those 2, and I know they're already loose. Maybe I'll just do that. It's probably easier. Apologies for the really tight angles, but if you saw where I am, how I'm here, it's not easy. So anyhow, I've undone these bolts. So these bolts here that hold this in, nice long ones like this. Oh, there is washers on the other end of them. Problem is these get a little bit hit by stones, speed bumps and all that sort of stuff. I've managed to get them out without messing around too much, and I bought a couple of new bolts just in case, because the bolts aren't much money and I just hate getting stuck in these things. So there's the mount coming out, and you can see it's not too bad, but it has gone a bit. Right, so here's the mounts. Obviously that's the new one, that's the old one, and you can sort of see this is nice and sat flat, it's solid on the surface, and this one's like wheels wobble but they don't fall down. So when you look underneath, you can see that you've got, this is a nice concave and this one's bulging out, and you stick your fingers on it and you can see the rubbers. I don't know how bad this mount was really, because the mounts will move a bit like this when they're new, because they're fluid filled, but obviously it's started to go, and I know I've got shaking problems, so it seems logical to do them now. Here in this picture, as a comparison side by side, you can see that the old mount on the left is actually about 5mm shorter. It's been compressed over time, so it allows the gearbox to sit a little bit lower than it should. So now to fit the mount, you've got to make sure the little pin here goes in the right place in the bracket. That's the bracket that's in the back of the gearbox, which I can see is there. It's obvious when you got it in place. I've cleaned up the ends of my 2 bolts like this, so they're in good condition and they work now. I realised I hadn't bought spare new bolts, which was a bit annoying. I'm going to be putting Loctite on all of this, mainly so it comes apart again should I in 10 years time need to do this again, which I probably will. So I'm still around in 10 years time. I don't want to be too certain about these things. On these 2 bolts here, the torque is 50 Newton meters or 55 Newton meters, depending on which part of the manual you want to pay attention to. And you love it when they can't quite make up their mind, because the little supplement thing seems to say that, and it didn't say it used to be something different, so I don't know. So these bolts here are oh crap, stupid bloody thing. Oh, I've got to be careful not to swear. So these bolts here, stupid bolts, these bolts here, as I said, are 50 or 55 Newton meters, and they're 17mm bolts. Yeah, so one of the reasons why I use the torque wrench is because that 50 Newton meters felt very, 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 very tight. And I would have thought, I mean, because of the position I'm in, it's a difficult position to be in. You sort of think, there is no way that's 50 Newton meters. That felt like 100, you know, trying to yank on that. But of course, if you're in a difficult position, you can't get much purchase, then, you know, these things feel worse than they actually are. Right, so I'm just putting some Loctite on the top, like so. And then I should hopefully be able to lift it up in place. So I do have a nice new nut for this one. Difficult to get in there. So that goes up like that. And then I've got to try and get my hand in there. And hopefully that'll go easy-ish. Because it's not exactly the easiest place to get into up there. I'll just make sure that's gone in its pinpoint, and yeah, it has. And now I've got to try and get my socket in from above again. So this is a fairly easy job to do if you're on a ramp. Most of this is, I mean, this is a fairly easy car to work on if you're on a ramp. When you're in a position I am, trying to do it like this, everything is a little bit difficult. That's it, that's it. Right, so these ones are 20 Newton meters, which seems rather low considering everything else I've just done. 4 bolts that I just did to 20 Newton meters are H6, so 6mm hex key, like that. Last job, which you didn't see when I started it, is put this heat shield back on, which obviously protects this cable here from the exhaust. So that just sort of goes in like this, something like this. It goes over a pin in here, and then there's 2 nuts that hold it up like that. I reckon all these heat shields are actually pretty important on this car. There's a lot of heat that comes off from these exhausts, and yeah, I think it's really worth making sure you get them all back in properly and in place. Just in case you're wondering why I'm struggling so much to film and bolt, that's how much space I have. So you can see if I put my hand there, I've got about 1.5 and bits, I suppose. Yeah, not great. So the engine mounts on this car apparently only last 30 to 50,000 miles. I think in hotter countries they wear out a bit quicker, probably because they're fluid filled and they get heated by the exhausts that go right next to them. They are in a very difficult position, and quite frankly, putting the car on a ramp would be a lot easier for this job. I mean, most jobs would be easier with the car on the ramp, but this is a particular one where it really would be easier because you have to drop the subframe. So the first job is to undo the bolts on the top of the mount so that you can start undoing that subframe. Right, this one's slightly easier than the other side. You can't quite see it, but there's the socket, and that's on the main engine mount bolt. And of course, the engine mount bolts are done up to 120 Newton meters, so they're a bit of a pig to get. So at least I can get at least that one from up here, possibly the others too. So it's just gone with a bit of a bang, but yeah, that's the main one. So this side, the passenger side, or the left hand side if you're in America, driver's side, is more difficult in terms of access down there, but it's more easier in terms of getting the actual bolts on the engine mounts undone. So that's the kind of extension I'm running. The engine mounts undone, those two nuts undone, now you can loosen off all the subframe bolts. The last three bolts there towards the rear of the legs, you have to take them out completely, but the front two on each side, so the front four, just undo a good way. Right, so here I am trying to do the driver's side in the UK, or the right hand side if you're in America, passenger side I suppose, mount. So this is all nice and loose because I got it undone earlier. This one was a bit of a pig to do. You can't do it from above, not with the gear I've got anyway, so I had to do it from down here. But for some reason the engine's canted over this way, and I've tried realigning it and I'm worried about damaging something. So that engine mount over there, I've got tons of space and it's in, the new one's in place. This one I'm going per the manual, and I'm going to undo this mount. I've already got 3 bolts out, and then this mount drops out, and then I can easily lift this mount up and change it. So I've sort of, the manual says, the Maserati workshop says you take all the exhausts out to get access and do it this way without dropping the subframe. I'm not sure about the logic of that. I couldn't see how I could get the bolts on that side, so I sort of gave up almost immediately. On this side I can get the bolts, and I don't want to risk unjacking and rejacking the engine now. So I finally got that engine mount out, and thought I'd show you the comparison between new and old. So these ones have really collapsed, and as I said, these engine mounts are known to not last terribly long. I mean 30 to 50,000 miles, so you know, you can really see that these definitely really needed doing. Right, so I've just torqued this up to 50 Newton meters. To be honest, I just guessed it because I couldn't get the torque wrench in either, even though I've got a small torque wrench. So now I've just got to fit my bracket back here again, and then that'll be ready. And then I'm going to torque this one up, and then I can lower the engine down, and then I'm finished for tonight because she'll be safe. Right, so this one's now torqued in. I've just torqued in this. It's a bit tricky, but if you use short extensions, long extensions, and you can get a 3/8 torque wrench in to do all of them, and they're all torqued up. These ones I had to guess the torque, so I just, for some reason, couldn't get it in there. I've used Loctite, obviously, on all of this to make sure. And then it also makes it easier next time you attempt to take it apart, because of course there won't be any corrosion and it should come undone nice and easy. So my lessons learned. I don't think I could have done the same technique with that engine mount. I just couldn't get into the bolts on it. That side for some reason came down easy. The engine tilted over this way, and now, so doing it this way was much easier. Taking this engine mount off this side, I'm managing to get enough pull down on this subframe to get the engine mount in there. A slight problem I've got now, if you can see, is I've got to line that hole up with that without damaging the engine mount threads. So the engine's slightly over. I'm going to have to be very careful letting it down and trying to get it in the right place. Right, so I've got to try and get underneath here again. I've spent many hours under here now. You think how many hours I've been underneath doing transmission oil change, diff oil change, engine mounts, engine oil change. Oh, it's really sort of stacked up. I've still got to get underneath the subframe and clean off 2 areas of rust and paint them up actually. That's not going to be fun. So this is the bit of rust that I need to tackle underneath that weird plate that seems to rust immediately from brand new. It's not too bad actually. Yeah, so this is one of those jobs, if you had this car on a ramp, it would have been massively easier. There is a ramp close to me, well, 30 miles away or something, and it's about 50 quid a day. If I have to do something like this again, I might just go and spend the 50 quid, because by the time you've jacked everything up, by the time you've struggled, I mean, this job took me most of yesterday to do, and I'm still not finished. Obviously, if I had been on a ramp, I could have just, she would have been supported here already. I could have just dropped these down, put a jack on the bottom of the pan here, and it would have been relatively easy to have changed these, and it still would have taken me 5 hours, 6 hours, or 4 hours or something, because I don't necessarily run that fast, but it would have been significantly easier, and the risk factor would have been significantly less. And that's something to really remember. You're jacking up something like a 2-ton car, you're getting in a very short, small space, you're having to adjust the jacks while you're underneath the car. The front you have to jack up a bit to so you can lower the subframe. So the car's already high in the air, then you're jacking it off of the ramps, and now it's not shaking, but it's jacked on the front. Jack stands, yes, but still, it's really not a nice thing to do. This is somewhere down here. Having the car so high up in the air is making it a little bit complicated. Right, there you go. Because it's a long way up and you're having to lean over the bonnet like this. I think it is the best way to do it. Yep, that's 120. Oh, it was struggling then. Yeah, so to stick this back, it's a bolt underneath there, and then the bolt in this corner here, and then that bolts onto there. There's another one back there that seems to have dismantled itself. You just have to do up with a pair of pliers to hold it. So the tools I use generally are Halfords, and the reason is because their advanced stuff is like lifetime warranty, like a snap-on. And I actually took my ratchet handle back the other day that started breaking up. I bought it 15 years ago, and I took it back, no receipt or anything, and they just gave me a brand new ratchet, which was pretty cool. So yeah, that stuff's good, and I like this one because it's like a screwdriver handle and you can use it as an extension. Joy, oh joy. There's not much worse jobs than this sort of type of thing, trying to sand underneath the car and get all that rust off. Notice I've got a full face mask on there, which is protecting my eyes really, really well, despite the fact that I'm really struggling there. Next job was to do these horrible little plates. So I used a flap disc like this to clean them up first, and then I went on to a wire brush to get the deep pitted stuff off. Although to tell you the truth, I just could not get all the rust out without really grinding into them. Right, so I clean these up. So yeah, what I do is I use a drill bit in the drill, and you can use different size drill bits as well, and you just run it sideways to get the rust out of corners that you can't get with the angle grinder. Best to use a face guard, and this is what I use, a full face, because otherwise grinding dust always goes in my eyes if I use goggles. I have a fair bit of experience with grinders and grinding dust, and getting stuff in my eyes, but this has fixed the problem. The normal goggles like that I just can't use. I mean, obviously those are knackered, but I just can't use them. I always get dust in my eyes. I think it builds up on the top here, and then when you take them off, it falls in your eyes. So look, the best thing to do with these is throw them away, but they're £13 brand new. So you're talking with the VAT and everything, 32 quid. Just get new ones, clean off the paint off the new ones and put proper epoxy on them, and then you'll be fine. Right, so there they are, degreased, ready for paint. Obviously don't touch them once you degrease them.
Best way to have done this, if you really wanted to save these for some bizarre reason, as I say, 32 quid for 2 brand new ones. I'm not sure it's worth it. But you could shot blast them if you've got access to a shot blaster. Then you wouldn't have a problem. What I could do actually is I could just make a nice bit of stainless steel plate up and just bolt that on them. Very quick note, here's my black Jotun Jodomastic. This is how I mix it up, 3.5 to 1. So I've done 1.75 centimeters on there to 5 millimeters. And then I just dip it in my little cup here and fill up the base and then the hardener up to the marks, and that does it. I'll put 2 coats of this on. It's winter grade and it can go down to 0 degrees substrate temperature, but winter grade is quite thick and gloopy, so 2 coats of this is equivalent to like 3 or 4 coats of summer grade. If I need very small quantities, I use a medicine spoon. You have to clean it before you put it back in the kitchen cupboard, but it's pretty good for getting small quantities. Heat shield for the engine mounts, both sides. The little stud that's welded into the subframe bolt broke off with the bolt inside it. Even though one was undoing quite nicely, it just suddenly snapped. The other side, I managed to get, there was enough left that I could get a nice new stainless steel M6 nut on, but on this side it snapped off so short. But there is another stud just alongside the original stud, so I just made this piece of stainless steel strapping and just... So the guard just goes up here to protect the engine mount from the heat from the catalytic converter that's just here. Anyhow, there you go. That should see this one fixed. Yeah, it's on the bolt even already. Great. Okay, it's time to put the plates up and bolt this subframe up, and then I'm done. So I've painted the plates. They're all now 2 coats of epoxy, thick coats of epoxy. I'm ready to go up. As I say, these ever rust out again, I'm chucking them and put new ones in. I've painted this bit, the chassis frame. Interesting thing, it was raining and water was coming out of this hole here. So obviously wherever the drains are in the engine bay, it's sort of, you know, around the windscreen area, it comes down here and runs in here, which is why these rust out so badly, because if you think about it, this is like a water trap holding water against this steel plate. Permanently probably, or in the winter permanently. I had to buy new bolts, 6 quid each, ouch, because this one here was so badly rusted out, it was rusted away. So I put some copperies on this one, and I'm going to stick that one, goes up in that hole like that. And what I've done is I've sprayed some grease up in these holes to make sure that it's all clean in there. I can stick this one up here like so. These ones here and these big bolts are, it says 120 Newton meters in one spot, and then another it says 123 Newton meters in the manual. I'm going to go 123. The small bolts here that go in the back of the plate, the small little rubber bolts, are only 20 Newton meters, so considerably less. Yeah, okay, my torque wrench slipped. I thought the bolt was broken then. Jeez. Obviously lots of fast forwarding of video needs to be done because you don't want to be watching me faffing around with this. So that goes in there like that. So this is just a pipe cover. It's not structural. If it were, the bolts would definitely look different than they do. And that bolt hole would definitely be bigger. Don't get stressed about this. Right. I've just spent about 5 minutes looking for the bolt, wondering where it is. All on the ground, looking everywhere. I screwed it back in the hole, which is logical if I'd have remembered it.